Hi, Tammy. Good morning. Thank you
Good
so
morning.
much for joining us today. So I guess most of you in the audience have heard of the NSO Group, which is by now not only the most famous Israel surveillance company, but I think the most famous surveillance company worldwide. But up until like a few months ago, it's been a very quiet company as well. We've never seen you in the press. And suddenly, last month, we saw you in 60 Minutes, giving interviews, and we have you today live with us today. So why the change?
First of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. And, you know, New York is fun, so that's a good reason to be here. I think in order to answer that, maybe I'll answer in a minute what NSO does and why we've been under the radar for so long, and that may shed light. So NSO is a company that was founded in order to help governments develop a software to fight encryption, to actually help fight terrorism and crime. I don't know how much you're aware, but intelligence technologies, legacy ones, kind of became obsolete over the years when encryption took over. The smartphone revolution gave the ability for criminal organization and terrorist organization to actually use encrypted communication to plan their crimes and terrorists. And governments became blind. Director Comey of the FBI, I think he mentioned targets were going dark. We heard President Obama, we heard Pompeo, we heard the Prime Minister of Australia, all talking about the fact that encryption is the biggest challenge of all. So this is why NSO came into the world. And the nature of us developing technology and selling it to governments and to intelligence agencies was the reason we were under the radar. It's not exactly a business you want to be. But lately, there's been a lot of misrepresentations of the company, and I think it was important for us to let people know what we actually do, which is develop a great technology that actually saves a lot of lives around the world.
Okay, so let's talk about it. What you call misrepresentation, and it's been called in the press misuse of your product. And I just want to give the briefest history of your press history. So in 2016, New York Times article was published where it said that research by Citizen Lab find out that Pegasus, your most famous product, was used to target human rights activist Ahmad Mansour in the United Arab Emirates. 2017, you were linked to Mexican scientists and public health campaigners. Later this year, another Mexican link to the international team assembled to investigate the 2014 Iguala mass kidnapping. And overall, it's been about 30 cases of misuse represented in the press. And in 60 Minutes, Shalev Hul, your co-founder and CEO of the company, said that you have conducted your own investigations and you have found out 3 cases of misuse. Can you tell us any more details about these 3 cases? How did you find them? How did you handle them?
First, I can tell you that it's interesting that every time there is a misuse, our name is being brought up. I think there is
We'll talk about that
companies.
as well.
But I think it's important to understand that to become a customer of NSO is a very hard journey. Our company, which develops technology and sells it to authorized governments, first of all, is under very strict regulation. Export license, and above of that, and I think uniquely in the industry, we also have a business ethics committee above the regulation, which actually discusses every single sale that we do. And only after we have the export license and the BC approval, and a very hard contractual documentation with our customers, we sell it to authorized governments. Now, every time there is an alleged misuse case that has been brought up, we investigate it very seriously. We developed this technology to save lives.
When you say brought up, do you read about it in the papers? How did you find out about these cases?
There's many different ways. It could be by the papers, it could be a red flag, it could be us noticing a change in a specific country, but in any event, we look at it. We have ways to discuss with our customers, their contractual obligation and technological ways, and we actually have shut down 3 systems in the past.
So you have a kill switch for the system. Once you find out there's a misuse, you have a kill switch.
We have the ability, together with the customer and without him, to do a termination of the system if we believe there is a misuse.
And what is your definition of misuse? Because another discussion we've been having is again, what is a terrorist? Some countries define terrorism act or anti-governmental activity in one way, and other countries define it in another way. So what is your term of misuse?
Terrorists are people killing innocent people. I think everybody knows what terrorists are. It's not a very difficult interpretation. And I think, as I said, we develop the technology and we sell it to authorized governments. And by the way, it's important to notice, because we had Foursquare speaking right in front of me, about mass surveillance, which is used in many cases, for good reasons and for commercial. We're talking about a very limited usage of our technology. I'm not sure people are aware, because, the name is being brought so many times. We're talking about less than the people sitting here in this room, and the whole world are being tracked with our software by the different customers and different governments. So it's not a mass surveillance tool, and it's here in order to fight the Bin Ladens of the world. I visited Ground Zero yesterday here in New York, and I was thinking to myself, what if this technology was available before 9/11? How many lives could have been saved by having the ability to get into the encrypted messages of terrorist attacks, which have IT organizations making sure that they can, plan and bring to the world terrorists and criminals and pedophile networks and cartels, and governments need that help, and we're here to support that.
Okay, we've mentioned Pegasus, and the press has been mentioning Pegasus for 3 years now, as I said, but this is not your only product. You have a whole line of products, which we have nothing about. So tell us about them, whatever you can say.
Actually, NSO is the leader in terms of intelligence gathering technologies, and we're talking about the Pegasus, which you heard. We have geolocation and tactical equipment, which amazingly has been lately used in rescue missions. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in the dam that collapsed in Brazil a few weeks back, Israel sent an aircraft with a mission aid to help locate survivals and unfortunately people who were buried. And NSO sent a team as part of this rescue mission with our equipment, our tactical equipment, which was able to actually find signals of cellular phones. Unfortunately, they were not survivals, but we took part of that. We also took part in the earthquake in Mexico a couple of years back. And if you're familiar with the big parking lot that collapsed in Israel in Upper Zell Street. So we have a lot of technologies, and we are really religious and happy about it being used by the right governments and the amounts of lives that were saved. I think people don't appreciate how many people don't even know that they owe their lives to the Pegasus software that help government prevent a lot of very terrible events.
But that's not the issue. I mean, nobody said that your technology doesn't save lives. We know that the technology, or we believe you that your technology saves life. I think the issue here is the cases of misuse and where is the line. And in your opinion, I'm not asking you to state your company policy, but in your opinion, is it all right to track and monitor journalists and activists in order to get to the final target?
Well, I think it's important to understand we're not an intelligence agency. Okay, we're a technological company, and we leave the hard decisions to the intelligence agencies. And this is a highly regulated space. We spoke about regulation earlier in Foursquare, where there is no regulation for private companies using a lot of private data. I think here we have heavy regulation, both export license and our, as I said, ethics committee. And in general, I think intelligence is a tricky business. And I think the decision that has to be taken by those agencies is never an easy one. I mean, going back to the Bin Laden case, U.S. spent, millions of dollars and so many years trying to track Bin Laden. And what if they knew that the only way to get to him was through intercepting a 16-year-old son? Would you authorize that? I'm glad I don't have to take that decision. But these are the type of decisions that are being taken by intelligence agencies. And I think we should be aware of that.
Okay, and going back to your ethics committee and the cases of misuse, when did you decide to create an ethics committee? Was it after you find several cases of misuse of your product?
Actually, it was done in 2016, right after the company was acquired by private equity. And we believed that the technology was so powerful in the terms of its usage, and that the regulation in the world did not come up to speed yet in putting all the right measures. So we knew that regulation was there in terms of export license, but we thought it would be really important to discuss not only at country level, but also on the agency level and understand the different usage. And by the way, the ethics committee is not just at the entry point. We revisit the usage every year before renewing maintenance, and if there is any change in the country at all, we also look at it. So it was brought up, and it's very important for our employees. I mean, our employees, which are all coming from the Israeli military, you know, we're all the high-tech of Israel. We're very lucky to have this as part of the employees. They care about what they do. They want to come to work and understand that they're doing something good for the world.
Yeah, NSO has 600 employees right now, and is valued just short of that, just shy of $1 billion. So it's a profitable industry. And I want to mention another case. 2 weeks ago, you've become so famous by now that Jeff Bezos' security advisor, Gavin de Becker, wrote a piece in the Daily Beast in which he accused you or your product of being part of a surveillance of Jeff Bezos against, I think, by Saudi Arabia. You denied it. And I read in Motherboard something, they quoted your spokesman and saying that, first of all, it wasn't being used, but another quote said that Pegasus cannot be used on US phone numbers. Is that true? And if so, why the exemption?
Well, first of all, I think that, you know, as I said, we have a lot of regulation about our customers, and I cannot share, of course, information about that. Yes, but sure, we do have a ban on U.S. and Israeli numbers, and I think that was part of the decision as an Israeli company and with U.S. owners to protect the different countries.
Okay, so even if you sell the company to someone outside, it cannot be used to surveil Israeli citizens, or if he has an Israeli phone number?
As I mentioned, I will not go into operational sides of the technology. I think you would probably appreciate that intelligence agencies need to have the upper hand. And if we share together with you and Calcalist and online everything about intelligence, I'm sure there's going to be some really avid readers reading and taking notes. So I hope you're with me in securing our lives, so I will not share too much information on that.
You almost had the headline of tomorrow newspaper. Just missed it. So another question. You said you take great pride of your ethics committee. Is it something that, as far as you know about the industry as a whole, is unique to your company? And what do you think about the practices of the industry that you are operating?
Well, I think, you know, we're trailblazers a little bit in that aspect. I think it's the technology in general is moving much quicker than the regulation. We see that all across the board in all areas, and of course also in cyber. And the fact that we have the business ethical committee is indeed unique today in the industry. I think we're alone. I'm not sure of others. And it's a tough decision, by the way, because you see that, you know, many countries, other companies would sell very happily too if the regulation approves it and the export license are granted. But I think it's important for companies to take responsibility. And, you know, that means turning away a lot of dollars and a lot of business and a lot of deals. But I think it makes everybody in the company, you know, proud and feeling more comfortable with how we do it and the way we do it. And it's part of the responsibility we should be taking. Yes.
Okay, connecting this, everything together. I bet the publicity and maybe the negative publicity has actually made you very successful commercially, because you've become the most famous company in the industry, as I said in the beginning. Do you even do any marketing work right now?
Well, actually, we were successful way before, and we would really say thank you and no to all of the publicity. As I said, we care a lot about our reputation, and we care a lot, our employees, our customers, ourselves. But I think that, you know, the discussion of cyber and the responsibility around it is important. And I think we welcome the discussion. And this is why we came forward and are here today also to speak to you.
Okay. So my final question, because we are out of time, I'm going back to the 60 Minutes interview in which, again, Shalev Julio said about journalist Jamal Khashoggi murdered in Turkey, that he said, I can tell that we've checked, and we have a lot of ways to check, and I can guarantee to you that our technology was not news on Jamal Khashoggi or his relatives. Why not just come out and say out loud, now that you give interview to the press, we heard you, we will not sell our product to Saudi Arabia?
First, part of working under regulations and with intelligence agencies is the fact that we will never discuss any customers deny or confirm, because
but
the minute
you deny and confirm a specific customer.
We denied the connection to the Jamal Khashoggi murder, which was horrific, appalling, and we condemn it in every way. And I think it's important for us to stand up and say that we had nothing to do with it. Regarding any other customer, it's not something that we will be able ever to discuss with anyone.
Okay. Tammy, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.